Good afternoon. Saturday, the 8th of August 2020. This is the normal Labour Bulletin coming out every Saturday from the Democratic Alliance. I want to give you a quote. The government's answer was to introduce new and harsher laws, to mobilise its armed forces and to send Saracens, armed vehicles, and soldiers into the township in a massive show of force designed to intimidate the people. This was an indication that the government had dedicated and decided to rule by force of law alone. End of quote. The quote above is appropriate. The people in the townships across the country are basically on strike. They're starving, they're homeless, they're jobless. The hopelessness has set in. And a lot of that blame is because of the Department of Employment and Labour. Our government, once again, has failed the workforce of South Africa. It's tragic, but let's face it, they have failed the workforce of South Africa, and that quote is appropriate to what is happening. The government has to rule now by force. They have to mobilize their own armed forces. They have to mobilize soldiers, police, in a massive show of force designed to intimidate the people. It's tragic that we have to see that today. I intend to refer to the idiocy of the harsher laws of equity, almost planned incompetence, and government's reaction to our future and our failure. I'm Michael Bagram, the Labour spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance. The Minister of Employment and Labour, has recently tabled old equity legislation from a few months back and is now wanting to push that through, despite the fact that our workforce is decreasing by the minute. They tell us that there's another 4 million people that have been retrenched in the last 2 months, over and above the 10 million that were unemployed last time. The Minister, in his wisdom, and one wonders where he found that one extra brain cell, has now tabled the equity legislation. What the Minister's going to do, he's going to ask Parliament to endorse the fact that he could make targets by regulation, by decree, without going back to our Parliament, without going back to the people and asking them. So he's going to take certain industries and he's going to say, I want to put targets, I want to put certain numbers that you have to put into place in your workforce, despite the fact that your workers are decreasing. How are you going to do it? No one knows. But the Minister, in his extreme wisdom, has chosen to do this. It would be laughable if it wasn't so tragic and it wasn't so designed to destroy the workforce of South Africa. The Portfolio Committee of Employment and Labour in Parliament has had lots of discussions over these past few months, and they have endorsed every single thing the Department of Employment and Labour has done. They've destroyed our workforce, and what does the committee do? In their wisdom, they've chosen to praise the Department of Employment and Labour and tell them they've done a good job. I mean, it sounds macabre. It sounds like Laurel and Hardy. If it weren't so tragic, it would be funny. Because I can't understand how a committee can endorse something which is such a failure. The joblessness in this country is almost at 50%. I mean, when we went into the pandemic, just before we went into the pandemic, we were one of the worst in the world. And what did the ministry do? In their wisdom, they introduced a minimum wage, a national minimum wage. That legislation lost us another 750,000 jobs. And of course, the Portfolio Committee endorsed everything the Minister did. And they applauded the ministry and said this is a great thing for the workforce. One cannot understand it. The lone voice, the Democratic Alliance, tried to speak up and desperately tried to shout the minister down. Of course, by sheer force, and that's how the government is ruling, by a massive show of force designed to intimidate the people, They're doing just that. The Democratic Alliance will not let up, and we will fight every single inch of the way. We won't let this happen to the workforce of South Africa. The quote that I started off with, where I started by saying the government's answer was to introduce new and harsher laws, to mobilize its armed forces, etc. A lot of you will recognize that quote. It doesn't come from me. The quote I started off with is a statement from the dock in 1964 in the Rivonia trial by none other than our beloved Nelson Mandela. We see exactly the same today. History is repeating itself. The government is wanting to rule by force, and the only way they can do it is with the armed vehicles, the soldiers, the police. The people are starving, the people have no work, all by design from the national government. The ANC, unfortunately, is mimicking exactly what we saw from the old National Party. Our government can only control by show of force. There is an insurrection going on, but they're using force to temper the people. The Democratic Alliance will continue in its fight. We will overcome. We will bring this country back to its former glory. Thank you for listening to me. It's Michael Bagram, the 8th of August 2020, from the Democratic Alliance. Thank you.